Hey everyone, it's Mr. Sassali here. I just wanted to walk you through a little slideshow presentation I made for the next couple minutes to help you understand the AP U.S. history exam that you're going to take this year online and the new rubric that they've unveiled that it will be graded upon. So, before you do this presentation, I highly recommend printing out the rubric that I posted online to Schoology for you to better understand how to develop some outlines for your DBQ essays. So go print that out now. Okay, so here we go. So first, some of the details. So remember, your AP U.S. history exam is on Friday, May 15th from 12 noon to 12:45 local time here. So you will have 45 minutes to complete one DBQ essay that then you will upload back up to the College Board's website. So remember that a couple things about this DBQ. Instead of a standard 7-document DBQ, it's only going to have 5 documents, so it's shorter. The topic of the DBQ will come from AP U.S. history time periods 3 through 7. So basically anything from just before the American Revolution all the way to the end of World War II is fair game as a topic for this DBQ. Now, instead of a 7-point rubric, they will be grading you on a 10-point rubric. And that's what I'm going to walk you through here today to better understand how to get those 10 points. And then remember that once you upload this DBQ to the College Board website, it'll be run through anti-plagiarism software. And any plagiarism found in your essay will result in a 0 on the exam for you, as well as colleges will be notified. So colleges you might be applying to will be notified of your actions. So definitely steer clear of that. All right, so let's start by going through the rubric here. So first off, thesis. You earn 1 point for your thesis statement. Nothing's changed here. This is the same thing we have done all year. So write a thesis statement just as you've done all year. Now for a little refresher, remember there's 2 types of thesis statements that we're looking to create. One is a complex thesis statement, right? And this is a thesis statement that has multiple categories or topics for analysis, where each one of those categories will become a body paragraph. So for instance, if it's a causation essay, you're writing about multiple causes of an event, right? So that is a very complex answer that shows nuance and understanding of the history, that not just one thing ever caused anything. Now, another one we're looking to create might be a complex split thesis statement. So remember, this is a thesis statement where, again, you have multiple categories or topics, but instead of just answering the question that's asked, you answer both sides of the historical thinking skill. So for instance, if the question asks you about change, your thesis will also have a topic about continuities. And so again, this shows nuance and understanding by splitting your thesis into the 2 different skills. So let's look at 2 examples here. So take, for instance, a sample question, right? A continuity and change question about the Civil War. So analyze the extent that the Civil War changed the United States. Simple, straightforward question. So here's one possible complex thesis statement. Politics changed from the war as it established the supremacy of the relatively new Republican Party in national politics for much of the next 50 years. And constitutionally, the war changed the structure of government by establishing the supremacy of the federal government over the states. Thus, the Civil War led to significant political and constitutional change in the United States. So realize this is a complex thesis statement because I have multiple topics, I have multiple changes that are occurring. That's what makes it complex. But also what I want you to notice is you've created kind of a roadmap now for the rest of your essay. I'm going to write a paragraph about the Republican Party. I'm going to write a paragraph about constitutional changes and the supremacy of the federal government, and I am done. Now realize this too, a lot of the thesis statements we wrote throughout the year, we would have 3 categories. So that's the first thing to note about this DBQ you're going to write on May 15th. It's probably going to be shorter. It's probably only going to be 2 body paragraphs because that's about all you're going to have time to do in 45 minutes as well. So if this were to be a complex split thesis, here's an example of a complex split. Politics changed from the war as it established the supremacy of the relatively new Republican Party in national politics for much of the next 50 years. However, socially, African Americans continued to be oppressed for the next century by Southern whites due to the failures to effectively enforce the Reconstruction Amendments that were supposed to lead to social equality. Thus, the Civil War led to significant political change. However, social race relations continued on for the next century. So realize this is a complex split because, again, I have multiple topics I'm going to explore, but instead of just exploring the changes, I'm also looking at the continuities. I've split the skill. And as you're going to see later on the rubric, both of these will lead you on the path to receive full points on this essay. So make sure, regardless of what you choose, that you choose a complex thesis statement. All right. Second, remember it's contextualization. So again, nothing has changed here, right? We've done this all year. Remember, contextualization means really you're providing a setting for the topic of the essay, right? So you're looking for broad events that led to the topic, broad events that happened after the topic, right? So what you want to do is weave these in throughout your essay. It's really easy to start your essay with kind of the setting, contextualization of the topic. It's easy to kind of start body paragraphs or after you provide evidence. So take, for instance, if I were talking about the continued oppression of African Americans after the Civil War, right? I might talk about how that continued on throughout the early 1900s, even into the 1920s with the onset of lynching throughout the country, or the new Ku Klux Klan that emerged in the 1920s. That would be good contextualization that connects to evidence that I am talking about, but shows how what occurred well after the topic. That is contextualization, right? Next, right? This is where we get into documents. Now, again, nothing's really changed here from what we've done all year. You're going to do the same skills. The only thing that's really changed is how much of it you are going to use, right? So you want to use all the documents that are given. So try to use all 5 documents for the best chance to score full points, right? Remember, what we should focus on is do not quote the documents. It earns you no points, as you can see in the rubric to the left here, right? Time and time again, it says a simple quote will not do. Also, it just wastes a lot of time and space for something that's not going to earn you any points. So don't quote documents ever. Analyze them, explain them, right? And then make sure whatever aspect of the document you are using, that you explain in detail how it supports the thesis you created. So a lot of problems I saw in the last DBQ that a lot of us wrote was we would analyze a document accurately, but then we would never really use it to defend a thesis statement, right? You're not just trying to analyze a document. You're analyzing a document and then explaining why that proves your thesis statement. So that then gets us into, right, so what we should see here is that if we use 4 documents to support our thesis, we'll earn 3 points. So remember, I always say use all of them because in case you mess up on one, you've given yourself a safety net there, right? From there, how you use these documents can earn you an additional 2 points. So if for 2 of those 4 documents, right, you do the same thing we've done all year, you'll be fine. So to earn 4 points, for 2 of the documents, use one HIP analysis, right, category to defend your thesis. And remember, HIP analysis is historical context, intended audience, point of view, or purpose, right? And explain in detail, not only identifying what, say, the historical context of a document was, but also then why it supports your thesis statement. So if we can do this for only 2 documents, right, we can earn 2 more points here. But again, like anything, I always advocate for you to do it for all the documents, unless there's one where you just don't know how to do it, right? And you just want to say, hey, this is what this document says, and here is how it supports my thesis. You can do that. But for as many of the documents as you can, identify a HIP category and use that to defend your thesis, right? So give yourself that safety net as well. All right. And then here is one of the bigger changes as well. So we're used to using a piece of evidence beyond the documents. Outside evidence is what we called it all year in class, right? However, there is a difference, right? In the DBQs we wrote all year, you only had to use one piece of outside evidence. Now to earn full points, you want to use 2 pieces. If you use one piece, you earn 1 point. But if you use 2 pieces of outside evidence, you earn 2 points. So a couple things to remember here. Right? So be sure to pick evidence that are relevant to the topic, right? It's not just randomly picking something from a hat and trying to wedge it into your essay here. Make sure it's a relevant event, development, person, idea to the topic. Second, try to use proper nouns whenever you can. Specific names, specific titles, specific events, right? Things that have to be capitalized are usually the strongest pieces of evidence we can use. However, we're not just dropping in the reference. We need to fully describe what occurred in that event, in that development, or what that person did with some accurate details. And then we have to explain how those accurate details are also supporting of your thesis. So remember, these are things that cannot be found in any of the documents. So you have to bring in some outside evidence out of these documents as well. And it cannot just be a mere reference. Don't just do the drop-in where we just say, this can also be seen by Shays' Rebellion, which shows that people were angry. That's a reference because you haven't described Shays' Rebellion. You haven't said what occurred at Shays' Rebellion and why that then would support your answer, right? And then finally, our complex understanding. Again, nothing different from what we've done all year, right? They give you a list of things you can choose from. Well, I'm going to identify 3, right, to choose from. And really, it's 2 is my best bet. And here's why. So the easiest ways to earn this point. First one is what's called analyze multiple variables, right? That first bullet point in the rubric there. And so if you, it's a cause and effect essay, right? And if you analyze that there were multiple causes of something, or multiple continuities, or multiple changes. So in other words, if you create those topics in your thesis, you're on track to earn this point. Now, another way of doing it is by explaining both sides of the historical skills. So now, if you can create a split thesis by talking about both causes and effects, both continuities, that's supposed to be similarities and differences, or continuities and changes. So if you can do that, right, then you are on your way to that point. So realize that by setting up a complex thesis statement, and then if you prove that thesis statement throughout your essay, you've earned this point. You haven't had to do anything different. You don't have to remember to do anything else, right? Another thing that a lot of kids do is provide a connection to a topic from a different time period. I highly, highly recommend to not do this because it is rarely done well. Usually it's just some kid jams some connection to slavery at the end of the essay and thinks that's good enough, and it's never good enough. Okay, it just isn't. Because one of the things to remember is that whatever you choose from this box, it has to be fully explored in your essay. It has to be part of your thesis. It can't just be something you tack on at the end to try to earn a point. So set that up in your thesis by creating one of those complex thesis statements I talked about at the beginning. All right, so with that in mind, to summarize, first, almost everything on this rubric is exactly the same skill as we have done all year. So it's not that the skills are new, it's just the point values are changed. So really kind of get comfortable with the point values, right, and how you're going to use those skills. Second, the thesis statement is the key to the whole thing, right? Develop a complex, well-developed thesis statement with multiple categories, multiple topics, either as just a complex or a complex split, because that will lead you down the path to getting all 10 points. Third, if you notice, 7 of the 10 points come from using evidence, using documents to defend your thesis, using outside evidence. So in other words, when you include the 1 point you'll have for your evidence, or for your thesis, that's 8 of the 10 points just by creating a thesis and defending it with documents and evidence. So really, really focus on these things the most. Right? If there's one thing that in a time crunch you have to get rid of the contextualization. 1, it's hard to do. And 2, it's only worth 1 point where your evidence is worth 7, right? So spend most of your time working on the evidence, right? If you have to get rid of something, get rid of your contextualization. And then next, right, that reminder that this DBQ will be shorter than ones you've done all year. probably only 2 topics, only 2 body paragraphs, because you only have 45 minutes. So remember that when you're creating your outlines, that you're not creating something nearly as long as what you would have created for our hour-long essays that we wrote. And then final, use these weeks to prepare yourself and organize yourself. Remember that this DBQ is open book. It's open note, right? So, but you're not going to have time during your essay to go digging through everything. So, but when you sit down to take that essay on Friday, May 15th, have in front of you all these study guides organized by time period that we used. Even pull some of your classwork that we've done all year. Have your book, right, with post-it notes on it, identifying different big topics where you'll find them in your book so that you can quickly reference things that you can then use in your essay. That is absolutely okay to do, and I highly recommend it. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Shoot me an email if you need anything. Talk to you soon.